Hello and welcome back to Art of Rally for our 7th weekly rally series. This time, for the March 17th series, we are going to Norway in the Group S Audi prototype. Now, another car I hadn't driven before, and I initially didn't even recognize it until I had a better look at the livery. Now, last time out in Indonesia, it didn't go quite so well. As I said there, it was a lot of a cursed run, plenty of mistakes, a twitchy car, skill issues, that kind of combination. Although, unusually, the scoreboard position was very good, at the time at least. For this one, I still had last week, in my mind. And so for the first stage I was a bit more tentative with my approach. I wasn't pushing too hard. In fact, my first error only comes in 40 seconds. That is very good, usually for me at least. And combined with the fact that I always have considered snow my worst surface, perhaps ironically worse than ice. I think you could understand that I wasn't particularly confident, but I eventually found this particular car to be quite decent, quite stable, as you can see here in these two consecutive throws. It sort of wanted to straighten itself out. The front wheels pulled, they had a nice pull to it, so I eventually did sort of start to push more, be more comfortable with it, and sort of throw more. Although crests still a huge issue for me, as they ever are, the perpetual skill issue in my case. And we are about to finish the first stage. Just one more turn left. Will we make it? Just about. Didn't hit anything for a 155.5, which puts us 15th. So, kind of return to the usual form, or lack thereof if you prefer. The run didn't make that many mistakes, and the mistakes we weren't particularly catastrophic. But somehow we ended up in a worse position than we were in last week, where I just kept fucking up every turn. Moving on, stage 2. This is one of the, I believe, 2 stages off the top of my head, where I can't consistently beat Master AI. I'm not entirely sure why is that. Perhaps these stages are more competitive in the leaderboards, so with the higher peak that the AI takes from, it's also more tough for everyone else, myself even. I like to think myself as pretty decent. Perhaps not truly 1%, despite what the leaderboards might say. I do have some solid results, but when put in comparison with people who easily have an extra 0 or even 2 at the end of their Steam hours played counter, I'm quite the distance away. Usually also lacking techniques. I don't do clutch kicks. Words. How do I speak English? And also, I don't use much handbrake. I just yeet it in and hope for the best. Speaking of yeeting it in, I expected more understeer here, but it turned out to be quite a good series car, and it did what I asked it to do, which I'm not used to it. So we crashed into a tree at the very end, and that also cost us positions, but thankfully not a lot of damage, and we were immediately presented with the repair station. So, stage 3, as usual, this is the sort of place where I tend to be more comfortable with and start to push more. And this was the case here, though I was wary of the fog. I didn't I don't entirely remember the layouts from start to end, and I was also wary that for Norway in particular, the fog is quite bright at times. Now, this isn't an issue with when you have trees, when you have dead trees even, but at times it really does get quite bright. Not quite bright as the Discord Light mode, the new one at least. I actually quite like the old one, but then they ruined it. Anyway, so far going well. I'm pushing a bit more, I'm feeling a bit more confident, a bit more safe. And this would be reflected in the result as well. And big jump there, big crunch. I quite felt it. This thing had a particular tendency to land in quite a way that was, well, let's say if you were the driver, you'd probably feel it. Actually quite liked it. Again, first time driving this car in the game. Honestly, I've never been a big fan of Audis, except the original ones for the first 3 or so years of Group E. I'll always find the other ones. They looked spectacular, but they were a bit overrated. They didn't win much after all. And here we are, stage 3 done. Didn't crash into anything at the end, and we were rewarded by going up positions. 45th. Still only top 15% though, which isn't very good. Although considering the sort of competition that does weekly rallies every week, I wasn't too worried about it. And for the final stage we do a reverse, and we didn't crash into any trees at the start, which is already a marked improvement, which obviously makes us quite the experience. I mean, we use our experience to avoid a singular tree that proved to be our foil. Okay, moving on. For some cars, I tend to struggle with hairpins, and I felt like this one was one of them. It had a certain different way to approach hairpins. I never felt that I got them quite right, and yeah, I usually drifted quite wide, which wouldn't be the case in other cars, but to be fair, in other cars I would have also had a lot more experience. It could be that the snow was also a factor in it. The snow that was snowing, of course, reduced grip quite a lot, but obviously also a big factor is that I'm just not very good. Still having a lot of fun though, and that is what matters, isn't it? Having fun and using said fun as an excuse for not being very good. You know, I'm not sweating. I mean, do I wish I was very good? Of course, but you never heard that, Now I've rambled through this whole track. Here's the end, and 146.7 for the final one, which puts us 8 places up again, 37th back into top 10. Pretty good overall, I reckon. Could have been better. Lost a good amount of time. But you know, let's check the scoreboards, leaderboards, where we end up in 37th. Pretty 8 and a bit tenths behind the 36th place, and top 10 is the usual stuff. I haven't seen Domer before, and Frankie M is missing. So I'm sure I will drop at least 15 places. I have no friends, don't mind that. But yeah, that's me in the 37th. Some of the names I recognize, which means pretty consistently in my skill area. But yeah, that was that. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.